So something real different for the channel, but something not that different for me. I've been into synths and triggered instruments for a long time, and not always successfully. I go back all the way to like the early bass synths and pickups, the Roland GR33, things like that, and they don't always track real well and don't sound that good either. There's just something about it, and especially trying to get a solid blend in between having the sound of the instrument and the synth going at the same time, where there isn't a delay lag and things like that. It's really been a nightmare. But today we're taking a look at something pretty cool. This is the Future Impact 3 from Panda MIDI. I got this sent out and was both excited and kind of doubtful. So, given my experience, but I gotta say, I'm pretty pleased on this one. So let's check it out, go through some of the stuff, and we'll talk about some of the things I did in the intro too. Now, the first thing that I like about the user interface is there isn't a bunch of stuff all over it, because especially if you're going to put this on a pedal board, even though it's a complex unit, you don't want a bunch of knobs and buttons and things, one good hit in the wrong place with your foot and things go scrambling. So I like that you have principally the center dial you can set to change a number of parameters that we'll go over. You can change everything from the blend to the effects to just about every parameter you can think of on here. The other thing that's real useful is on the input level, there's 3 lights, yellow, green, and red, that are going to give you kind of a peaking meter where you want to set it for your instrument and get it to its optimal place so that it's going to track the best, and you're also going to get a good straight through as far as your bass. That one's a new one for me. I haven't seen that on a few units, so let's get this set up here. You'll see it right here. So I want to keep it in the yellow. I could probably go a little bit more with that, but because sometimes I go a little hotter with things, I probably not too much more if I really bang on it, so you can get that red to light. So I'm probably going to back off just a little bit to make sure, especially if I hit, a thumb note or something, I don't really knock it out and make it overload or make the tracking go nuts. But right here, you've got a good... There's no lag. It has a very immediate feeling. So even with some of the better ones that I've tried, I feel like it's always just kind of right behind me. Whereas this feels very immediate. And then when I listen to a blend where you're having, say, 50% bass and 50% synth, it doesn't sound like something's just a little bit off. You're kind of behind and ahead of the beat at the same time. So that's really cool. I like this, that it's engineered right up front, that you get the optimal setting right in the front. And if you switch basses, you can tweak that a little bit and make sure that your tracking's still on. Then, of course, you can set your output level, and that's pretty much the front controls, aside from if you select a certain parameter that you want to affect, like the blend or something, then you come down here to the edit, or to switch banks. It's another dial. You can go to another bank, or you can scroll it for the amount that you want to change whatever parameter you've selected here. Then at the bottom, you have your program and your on-off. Pretty simple. This is straight through. And then turn it right back on. And then program obviously is going through different presets. So, you have... Good stuff, man. And there's actual usable presets in here. The ones that I've used in the demo, I didn't affect at all. I just went through, and I may have tweaked a little bit here and there with the user interface that they actually have for the computer. We'll be checking that out in a minute. But they have some software that makes editing really, really cool and easy to do. And it looks basically like the old school rack synth would look like. Like I said, we'll get to that in a minute, but so cool. Let's try a couple here real quick. Good tones. I mean, usually I'm not a fan of factory presets, but these guys actually did a good job. From wide filter sweeps and things like that to something just with a nice synth double to give, uh, say you had a bass line that you wanted backed up with just a thick sine wave type of sound, something without a lot of detail in it, things like that. Jump ahead. And then much more extravagant tones like that. Old school stuff kind of sounds like Gap Band or something. There's probably 3 people in the audience that are going to get that reference, but if you do, you're good in my book. So, again, you could bolt through your programs like this, and you just stomp on it to get your to move through your banks and things. Now, some of this, again, they've got some really exotic presets in it, things like that. I'm a big fan of that type of stuff because when you think of synth bass, you generally think of things funk, uh, techno, things like that, and it doing strictly bass lines. But I enjoy a lot of stuff like 80s synth pop, that type of thing, bands like The Fix or modern stuff in like synth and dark wave, stuff like that. This is also something that could be used there and doing a lot of chord work or, you know, a very layered type of things that you would hear in those type of genres. That's in here too. So this is the best way to think about it is this is a fully featured synth that you can trigger from your bass. Now, the other cool thing about that is that you have a MIDI in and out here, which also means you can do dumps of different banks, share sounds, back up your libraries, that type of thing. But it also means you can interface this with other units. So you can't quite see back there, but I've got a rack of synths going up on the shelving behind me. And it's a really cool thing that I can take this and plug it into there and start triggering multiple synths and huge layers of things by using the MIDI out on this. Really, really cool feature and something I'm definitely going to be using here with some stuff I'm working on, some soundtrack ideas, things like that. But being able to have this as kind of a brain that you can make really orchestral, lush type of things, that it's all right here and starts in this small unit that you can carry around on, you know, your board really easily and have the synths just completely off somewhere. Now, speaking of this, I thought it was kind of cool that in the US, this is unit is from Hungary apparently, but in the US they're distributed by Tech 21, who also makes Geddy Lee's gear. Which what Geddy probably would have given to have this unit early on and not having to run over and play his synths or pick between his bass and his synth or do the 900 things he has to do to be able to pull things off, to be able to double lines like vital signs or something like that with his bass and the synth without having to actually go there. So kind of interesting that the guy who made bass and synth famous probably would have benefited from the unit and the same company's distributing it. So everything comes around somehow. Get one for Geddy. They'll love it. So let's take a look at the on-screen program and how fully featured this is, where you can go and do your edits, and that's going to be right over here. So as you can see on here, every possible filter, every possible piece that you can see as a module in building your sound is represented here. You can alter them, and the other cool thing is you don't even have to have your bass in hand to create the sound. You have a keyboard at the bottom that you can use to trigger and create your sounds. If you don't want to play through at that moment, develop the sound, dump it into the pedal, and then you're all set to go. It's right here, and you just dump it into your banks, good to go. That's really cool there, being able to operate it like a fully featured synth, right, and get tactile with it instead of having to, you know, go behind and try and create a sound just by using 2 little knobs on the front. Those are cool and you can adjust with it, but it's just going to be miles easier doing it through something like that, and a lot more fun to be able to actually go through and move the filters and that type of thing and create your ideal sound and really notch it in. So I really like that part of it too, that there's a full out editor where you can create your sounds in a really visual way and kind of an old school way, even though this is new tech gear. So there are two examples that I did in the beginning where you can hear two different things. One is a bass synth style, but that had a little extra to it. And that was on the more elaborate piece that had the big John Bonham-esque sounding drums and everything. And if you can name that song, not only are you awesome, but put it down in the comments. I'd be interested to see how many people recognize that one. Definitely one of my favorites off my favorite album from that band. So major street cred. If you can name that one below, hit me up. In any case, on the other one, which I did Head Like a Hole from 9 Inch Nails, you should have recognized that one too. You can hear that's 50% bass synth and 50% bass. So there's a blend where it actually kind of sat right in the middle. You could kind of think of it as a distorted electric bass, but it also had a synthy sound to it. So you can create really interesting textures by blending the two. So you've got an example of each. And then for the last one, you should know that one too. Of course, Army of Me from Bjork. And I wanted to get that really low end, massive type of fat synth that she had in there. That's a tough one to duplicate, and I didn't want to stray from a preset, but I think you got the idea, and it covered it pretty close. That's all synth and really just flat out bass synth. And then a guitarish sound, kind of like what the top end on her chorus was, that I did at the end, where it's almost the synth imitating a distorted guitar. Now, because I said something about creating this type of stuff, one thing that if you're a synth player, you know, is that effects make the sounds. That even a really good synth sound will always benefit from the type of reverbs, delays, all the other effects you could possibly think of that are going to go on it. That's what makes the color for it. So to demonstrate, I'm going to hook up one effects preset, and we'll just go through and hear a couple examples of the sound by itself and how we can turn it into maybe something a little bit more ambient. And you can really see what kind of power is inside of the unit and how you can see it as something more synth-like and not just bass-like. All right, so let's try some stuff. Let's hear the preset by itself. Not bad. Let's put some effects on her. I like it. Check out another one. For you real synth nerds, I think we're getting into Vangelis territory here. Definitely got a bit of some of his old school vibe in it. So that's cool. And again, this is just adding effects to the source sound in here. If you're into synths, you know, this is kind of par for the course. But if you're new to getting into it, just a sample of how much more you can do by just adding some effects to what's already in here. And there are some built-in effects. I'm just using some that are a bit more elaborate and a preset I happen to like. Let's try one more, see if we can find something a little different. So let's check out our initial sound here. Pretty cool, pretty rough. Let's hear some effects. Well, that got dark pretty quick, didn't it? I like it. But so if you're not used to it, again, just a quick overview of people just getting into synth, how this can be used. And like I said, I'm using some more elaborate effects, but there are choruses and all kinds of the standard effects that you would want out of a unit inside of here. And they can be found inside the on-screen unit as well. So they're easy to dial in and great to make a preset, toss it back in here. So that's going to wrap it for this one. I definitely see some real use, at least for me, coming out of this. I think if you're into exploring sounds, or if you like just doing even rush type of things and want to duplicate some lines, that type of stuff. If you want to do more elaborate stuff, I could see this being totally at home in a band that does like Tools type of psychedelic metal type of sounds. Uh, just anytime you want to stretch out your sound and add some keyboard and some synth tones without actually having to have a full-time keyboard player, or just layer things on top of your bass that are going to give it a whole new dimension. I recommend checking it out. I think it's a very cool unit, and once again, gotta get one of these to Getty. So what are your thoughts on this? What bass synths do you like? Toss me down some great bass synth lines that I can check out and maybe use this on, and I'll do a couple YouTube shorts or something of some other lines that deserve to be heard, and I'll use this unit to do it, and some places where you think this might come in handy. So I'll see you down in the comments, and I will see you on the next one.